Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and our topic today is the Internet of Things, opportunities for carriers and their vendors. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for today. Mubeen Khan is Associate Vice President for IoT Solutions at AT&T. Mubeen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Saverio Romeo joins us from the UK. He is Principal Analyst at Beecham Research. Saverio, thank you very much for joining the webinar today.
Thank you very much, too.
And Craig Miller is here representing our sponsor, Sigfox. He is Vice President of Worldwide Marketing. Craig, thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure to be here, Martha.
And I'm Martha DeGrasse with RCR Wireless News. A quick word about RCR Wireless News. We are a premier news source for the wireless communications industry, publishing since 1982. Find us on the web at rcrwireless.com, on Twitter at RCR Wireless News, and find RCR TV on YouTube. At this time, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to direct your attention to a feature report on the Internet of Things opportunities for carriers and vendors. This is published today on the RCR Wireless website. You can find it on the RCR Wireless homepage by clicking on the reports link up top. A few quick takeaways from this report. The Internet of Things will connect billions of devices, but only a small subset of those will actually use cellular networks. IoT platforms and applications represent opportunities for mobile operators, and these may be independent of connectivity. Data collection and analysis is seen as the most valuable part of the Internet of Things for carriers. Key verticals for IoT deployments include energy, manufacturing, shipping and asset tracking, connected vehicles, connected homes, and healthcare. The emergence of low-power, wide-area networks like Sigfox and LoRa has motivated mobile operators and their vendors to explore low-power solutions of their own in order to compete. Category 1 LTE chipsets are emerging as a low-power solution that works with existing wireless infrastructure. Meanwhile, 3GPP is working on standards for 3 different cellular IoT technologies: LTE-M, narrowband IoT, and extended coverage GSM. Several European carriers have invested in low-power wide area network technologies that are independent of LTE or 3G. The Internet of Things will increase signaling traffic on mobile networks that control plane traffic. A lot of core network vendors are talking to carriers about ways to manage this through things like batching non-critical messages, timing those messages, and avoiding duplicity there. And finally, the IoT is expected to eliminate some diagnostic type jobs. Meter readers is always the classic example that we hear in the smart meter world. But on the other hand, the IoT is expected to create more jobs in areas like data analysis and also potentially in product design. If you think about the complexity of connected products, the design often needs to be simpler so that people can use them effectively. Now, at this time, we're going to hear briefly from each of our panelists, starting with Mubeen Khan from AT&T.
Thank you, Martha. Welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Mubeen Khan, and I have the responsibility for product management at AT&T for our IoT platforms and end-to-end solutions. Specifically, I manage a team that works on end-to-end solutions in vehicles and asset management and healthcare. So asset management solutions are supply chain solutions, solutions for asset monitoring. Vehicle solutions include connected car. They include fleet management applications, security in the car, as well as usage-based insurance. And then healthcare is around remote patient monitoring and connecting a myriad of healthcare devices in a HIPAA-compliant way. I also manage a platform team, and that is building platform solutions under the brand umbrella of IoT services, targeted towards solution integrators and developers, where they have tools like M2X, like Flow, like Drive, to build applications for enterprises. And you can read more about it on our website. And that's sort of an introduction in terms of what I do. In terms of AT&T's foray, most of you may have heard, we have over 25 million devices under management in IoT, a premier provider globally of our connectivity platform and end-to-end solutions, and major investments in all those areas in IoT, as well as our consumer products like Digital Life, which is a connected home product.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mubeen. At this time, we're going to hear from Saverio Romeo from Beecham.
Good morning to you. I guess my name is Saverio Romeo. I'm a principal analyst at Beecham Research. Beecham Research has run research on the M2M space and the IoT space and wearable technology since 2006 as a company, and each individually even earlier than that. We look at this space from an horizontal point of view, so looking at the various technology that enable everything we are talking about, so the platform, the connectivity, the analytics, security, and so on. And then, as you can see from our map, we see we analyze the impact of the IoT in different sectors. And as you might know, we are talking about any economic activities and social activities that we are involved in. We are looking a lot at how this world is evolving from an M2M centric approach, so in other terms, a single business process, single data set approach, so an application centric approach towards a space approach in which you have different sensors and devices in specific spaces. These spaces become intelligent, and therefore you have smart cities, smart hospitals, and all that. Now, in order to enable all these, if you go to next slide, Martha, there are a number of connectivity options, and adopters of the IoT M2M does not really bother about which one you use as long as you ensure the connectivity. And you can see that we certainly at the moment go from a dominant position of cellular, but we have many others, and the LP1 that will be a key topic of the discussion today is definitely a connectivity that has shaped the environment in the last 1 year. And in the next slides, you see a bit our view. Martha, if you please move to next slide. You see our view on how LP1 position itself. Our opinion is that we are going towards an IoT that has two phases. The low data phase is so whole a set of low data consumption, low data intensive applications, which will be served by connectivity like LP1, and then you will have the high data, big data, if you want, type of application that will be served from the 3GPP type of technologies, and not only. And there will also be cooperation between different type of connectivity. So the IoT is connectivity agnostic in the face of the adopters, but there are a number of issues in order to provide this element of agnosticism to the user. So LP1 is at the moment an important element in the connectivity horizon of the IoT. And I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion about that today. Thank you.
All right, Saverio Romeo, thank you very much. At this time, we're going to move on to Craig Miller from Sigfox.
Thank you, Martha. Happy to be here and sponsor this webinar. Hopefully, the audience gets a lot of information out of this. So, I run marketing and strategy for Sigfox Communications. And for those of you who don't yet know the name, we're a small but very focused LTE chip maker. You won't find any 2G or 3G in our products. That makes our chipsets small and very cost effective and extremely power efficient, which we think is ideal for this IoT space. We're founded in 2003. We quickly became the undisputed leader in 4G WiMAX chips. But since 2009, we've now launched 3 generations of LTE chips, including the world's first Category 1 chipset we call it Calliope. That was introduced early last year, and it's now certified and shipping commercially. We are headquartered in Paris, but we're publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And one of our strategies is to be the LTE for IoT chip company. Now, I want to highlight kind of how we see LTE evolving to meet the needs of this IoT market. And there's a lot of reasons why we think LTE makes a ton of sense. One, it's a global standard, widely accepted, huge investments, which means there's great longevity assurance and a large innovative ecosystem working on the behalf to improve products and connectivity out there. Obviously, the networks are growing, increasing in coverage and capacity. We've got 2G and 3G networks in the process of being dismantled or sunset, refarmed, all that spectrum. So you've got LTE just continuing to grow in terms of coverage. And then the technology that's built into the LTE standard provides things like all IP scalability, good quality of service, low latency, high reliability, a lot of things going for LTE. And now if you combine that with the kind of the cost and size and power advantages of single mode LTE implementations like we deliver, and then add to that what's going on the roadmap coming from 3GPP and their MTC roadmap. We'll highlight some of those things later, but MTC stands for Machine Type Communications. All that stuff taken together is kind of a recipe, and the ingredients that mean you'll have very highly optimized connectivity for all these IoT use cases. Now we know, Martha, next slide, please. We know that IoT is not really a one-size-fits-all application space, very diverse, but and so are the connectivity requirements within. And what I want to point out here is that we believe LTE is responding to that diversity and that need. And this image just attempts to capture in a sort of a simplistic way kind of that range and how the different LTE categories or flavors can map to those requirements. And just as a few examples, you might have a water meter that reports usage daily, which is a very low payload, very infrequent access. That would be at the bottom of this chart and could leverage what's been called narrowband IoT, or is likely to soon be called category M2 from 3GPP. You might move up the stack here into something like maybe a fitness tracker that wants to stream music while not being tethered to your phone. It needs a little bit more throughput, but still needs battery life. Category M1, or what's been called Cat M, provides that is suitable for that. You keep moving up, maybe a fleet vehicle or asset tracker that needs to generate or transmit more information more frequently. Maybe it starts to look at a category 1 kind of application, all the way up to maybe in-car infotainment or some of these IoT gateways where you really need the broadband capability of category 4 LTE. And the point here is that LTE spans all of this. LTE technology does this at very low power in many of these cases. So this LTE really is a low power wide area technology. It's not. It shouldn't be just assumed to be not suitable for these low power, low data applications. Now, the good news is all of these technologies, all these flavors can coexist in the same LTE network. And as the technology deploys, you'll see millions of these on the same kinds of networks that you have existing today with many millions of mobile phones and other devices. So to summarize here, I think we're pretty confident that LTE technology done right can enable a huge range of IoT applications with the right connectivity solutions. And that's what Sequans is targeting, is to do really highly optimized, purpose-built LTE for IoT chipsets. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Craig, very much. Okay, we're going to move on into our discussion now, starting with the opportunity for carriers. And Saverio, I'd like to direct the first question to you. We hear so much about platforms, applications, data as the real opportunities for carriers. I think Verizon said late last year that 80% of the opportunity in the IoT would come from applications, 15% from platforms, and just 5% from connectivity. So I'm interested in hearing how you see this evolving for carriers to really capitalize on these new opportunities in platforms and applications.
Certainly, the connectivity it will be a small element of it, even if we are observing some increase in the connectivity ARPU in some operators, and this increase in connectivity ARPU is probably led by the fact that companies start to appreciate the connectivity of assets and the data that this connectivity is producing. They start to analyze this data, raise questions about what do we do with this data, and when they realize they get good output from that data, they want more. So definitely this leads to some increase in connectivity ARPU, but as you said, the real core of the opportunities in the IoT is around the data that is produced in the environments in which we connect, and the use of this data through applications, and the ability to enabling creativity through application development. And in order to do that, you need to have platforms, the so-called IoT platforms, that they do a number of things from the traditional M2M platform who does the connectivity device management, and to go up the stack to the data analytics part of it, the data management, the data orchestration, then you go even further up to the application enablement platform. So the IoT is a world of services, and these services will be developed thanks to the data and thanks to the applications and to the platforms that enable the organization to manage all these. So I kind of agree with what Verizon says, but also it's important to highlight that this observation on increase of connectivity ARPU is also an interesting phenomenon to look at.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Now, Mubeen, how do you see AT&T starting to monetize IoT, both looking at platforms and applications and even looking at connections that are not using cellular networks?
Yeah, so we definitely, as a whole, the market category, connectivity and platforms and applications for IoT are on a terrific growth strategy. And you see that in a lot of the announcements that IoT solution providers, application companies, carriers like us are making in the marketplace. And to the last comments in terms of split between the connectivity platforms and applications, we see a similar kind of a split. I don't know if I have exact numbers, but connectivity will be a small portion of the total opportunity, yet it is still going to grow over a period of time. In terms of monetization, I believe the way we are approaching this is taking a look at customers' solution approach. So I talked in my introduction, there are different categories I manage. I'll take an example of one of those categories. In asset monitoring, you have a category of heavy equipment monitoring. And in heavy equipment monitoring, you need solutions that include connectivity, not just from cellular, but in many cases, a private Wi-Fi network and satellite, because many of those construction sites or mining sites or agricultural farms are in places where cellular perhaps doesn't generally exist. And so when we work with customers, we are taking a solutions approach where we are providing them this multi-network connectivity, which may include cellular, but then really looking at platforms that will serve those use cases without really having the developer and the solution integrator care so much about what is the underlying technology per se. It has impacts on devices and the platforms, but that should really become very seamless for the end solution integrator or the customer.
So does that mean that the platforms could at some point be used on another network, not AT&T's?
Potentially, yes. The platforms that we offer today in the marketplace are more and more network agnostic and network technology agnostic.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. Thanks. Now, do mobile operators and their vendors have a role to play in securing IoT data? Craig, can you take that question first?
Yeah, I'll give you my perspective. Look, you know, security is kind of the hot button topic for IoT. I think everybody in the value chain has a role to play. I think we all recognize that security is kind of one of those, you know, weakest link kind of things. This is a complex network and set of technologies that we're talking about, and we all have to do our part. I know for LTE, you know, there's a couple of things that are, you know, baked into the standard, and one of them is, you know, link layer encryption. So the payload is encrypted over the air. It's inherently secure in that way, and in addition, you have, you know, kind of a proven, industry proven SIM authentication and access control kind of mechanism in place. So kind of at the low level, or at the comms node level, you've got some of that built into the technology. And I do think, you know, whether other parts of the value chain here, whether it's storage or processing or what have you, that they also have their role to play in their side. So maybe one of the other panelists has a comment.
Yeah, this is Mubeen. I totally agree with Craig, and I would argue, and maybe I'm biased, that the network piece today is probably a fairly secure element in that. But obviously, security is required end to end. It doesn't help anybody if just the link layer or the network layer is secure, because that data is going to flow through some wireline network to a cloud, to a device, maybe get processed and then onto some dashboard on somebody's tablet. So that all of those layers really end-to-end need to be secured, as well as the device itself needs to provide some sort of a trusted environment and identity management that is secure. So I think all of those layers need to be secured, and definitely network providers and device companies and application companies all have a role to play in this.
Can I add just to the completion of all this? There is here in Europe a quite interesting debate about, I want to touch the last point that Mubeen touched, which is about the security of the connected devices. And there is here in Europe quite interesting debate that goes up to the regulators on an approach by security by design approach for connected devices, which I guess required a standardization approach from a regulatory perspective, and this thing here is quite strongly debated and has pushed, for example, in the UK, the industry to be gathered together around an IoT security foundation that primarily is looking at security aspects in the IoT in holistic terms. So from all the things Craig and Mubeen said until the end of the devices, it was quite interesting to attend this conference in which academics were able to hack connected devices in a matter of 15 seconds. So I think security is a critical point in the IoT. If there is not a secure IoT, we are not going to do the IoT.
Right, I've heard that from others as well, and that's a very good point and an interesting anecdote. And obviously, security is sort of table stakes for the value in data analytics. But assuming security is there, Mubeen, what role can mobile operators play in IoT data analytics?
Yeah, so data analytics, I look at it very broadly, the term. A lot of the applications and solutions that are deployed today on our network don't necessarily use or generate tremendous amounts of data, but it's the right data at the right time that is important. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Having a piece of data that tells somebody to shut down a machine because it's about to break, or dispatching somebody because a critical event happened in an asset that requires somebody to go and fix it is not a lot of data, but it is the critical data at the right time. So I think a lot of it is very deterministic in the sense that if this and this happens, you know, call somebody. So getting that data and processing it and combining it with your enterprise software systems like dispatch services or trouble ticket systems, and getting that processing right is paramount for a lot of these enterprise applications. Now, there are applications that require a large amount of data analytics. So for example, the data you collect from driving behavior of you and I, where that data is collected, combined with weather data and other, and then the insurance company rates us whether we are good, better, or best drivers. Now that requires a heavy lifting on analytics. I think from an operator's perspective, we are focused on making sure we securely deliver the right data into the platforms. We offer our customers the ability to extract and use and normalize that data. And in the end, we may partner with companies that have the best analytic tools available, small and large companies, and make sure those tools work very well with our network and with our platforms. That's the approach, at least, that we are taking at AT&T, is making sure that we offer our customers the best tools, whether they are internal or external through third parties, to do the right analytics.
Okay, great. That's interesting. Okay, terrific. Anything else on security or data analytics before we move on? Okay, at this time, we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about low power wide area networks, because these have been in the news quite a lot in the last few months. And Saverio, I know that you've spent some time looking at these. The ones we hear the most about are Sigfox and LoRa. And I'm wondering if, in your opinion, these do represent a threat to mobile operators.
So they're definitely occupying a territory in which mobile network operators are struggling because cellular probably is too expensive. And I'll give you an example of a case I studied closely for a variety of reasons. There is an application of precision livestock in France. So the application is to monitoring cows into quite extensive fields. The monitoring of the cow is primarily monitoring the position of the cow, but at the same time also monitoring two key indicators. One is temperature and one is pH. Now the company initially was engaging with an operator, but they switched to an LP1 solution, and you can imagine which one, being in France. And the issue there is that in order to monitor a cow, you need 15 bytes per cow per day. So the traffic is very low, and the use of the LP1 solution was more convenient. And in agriculture, you can find quite a number of these applications. In fact, agriculture is becoming an area in which LP1 is becoming quite prominent. Vineyards are using LP1. Strawberries collection are using LP1. And then you go in other application like in smart parking or other areas in which basically you need a small amount of data in order to do to fulfill your task. Okay. So definitely sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
So definitely are becoming an element of competition for mobile network operators, but at the same time, probably they can also be an element of cooperation with mobile network operators. And you see some mobile network operators partnering with LP1 providers rather than necessarily embracing and waiting the LTE-M. They will probably embrace LTE-M, but at the moment they're also partnering with these companies.
Now, which operators do you see taking the lead on partnering with the low power wide area network providers? I know Orange has invested in LoRa technology. Who else do you see doing that?
Telefonica has a partnership with Sigfox.
Right.
If you then see other mobile network operators, some of them they have invested in LoRa. Some others are more concentrated on the standardization process in 3GPP, waiting for the LTE-M and preparing their clients for low power wide area network applications. So the approaches are different here in Europe. Certainly, at the moment, as I said at the beginning, LP1 is the connectivity technology that has shaken the environment and can be seen as a threat for mobile network operators in those applications that require low data traffic.
Okay, great. Now, is it less secure inherently than cellular?
This is we can spend another day around the debate on the degree of security of LP1 solutions. And the school of thoughts are different. You have the school of thoughts that believes that Sigfox is less secure than LoRa. You have the school of thought that believes that LoRa and Sigfox, LoRa is less secure than Sigfox. And there is the idea that the cellular has a strong security element in its history of SIM, therefore more secure than the LP1 solution available today. In my opinion, there is a lack of clarity in this very important element, which is the security at the moment in this environment.
Okay.
Hey, Martha, this is Craig. If I could just chime in a little. I believe most of these proprietary wide area technologies, they do have some form of link layer security. I don't know about the strength or the key encryption or the mechanism they use for encrypting that payload. But the other thing I would say is that you have to think about is most of these LPWA proprietary technologies operate on unlicensed bands, right? They're designed primarily to operate in ISM or some other unlicensed frequencies. And there is a little bit of a concern there about maybe it's not privacy, but maybe it's reliability in terms of secure. Are you sure your data got there, right? So
yeah,
they're more prone to interference and collisions and congestion than maybe the cellular networks are. So
right. And
something to think about.
To that point, I think some of these networks rely on cellular for backhaul in some use cases. Is that right?
That's probably true also, yes.
Saverio, have you seen the same thing? I think Sigfox perhaps relies on GSM for backhaul in some cases. Is that correct?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, yes. There is also the idea, for example, that satellite becomes the backhaul of LP1 networks.
Okay. So not necessarily a clear opportunity for carriers to aggregate and backhaul this traffic, but
I think it's too early to say.
Too early to say.
Yeah, this is Mubeen. So I agree. This is evolving, and we are evaluating all the different options. But the backhaul, in many cases, becomes an interesting opportunity, especially in situations where you need a localized coverage to connect to a campus or something where you have a bunch of sensors, let's say a refinery, and you need low cost, or a ranch, as Saverio was talking about, the cows, connected cows, right? So those kind of opportunities with a cellular backhaul works really well. But also, I think over the next few months, maybe even weeks, we will start to hear more about what GSMA is doing and some of the carriers and equipment providers are doing in terms of the availability of LTE-M or narrowband IoT and the adoption. And I think that would make a pretty heated competitive environment, looking at all the different use cases and the technologies to go and sort of figure out what's best for the customers.
Okay, great. We'll be ready to hear about that as soon as those releases come. In the meantime, we have Category 1 LTE. And Craig, can you give us a little bit of information about Category 1 LTE chipsets?
Sure. Yeah, we were kind of among the first to really push this technology as an IoT solution. Fundamentally, the way to think about Category 1 is as slow. It's slow LTE. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but what that also allows you to do as a modem manufacturer or chipset manufacturer is to simplify, reduce the size, reduce the processing speed, et cetera. So it's a bit like, comparing, a 4-cylinder engine to an 8-cylinder engine. It's just more fuel efficient. But at the end of the day, one of the misnomers or one of the kind of misunderstandings about power in wireless is power is really all about the use case. It's about payload size. It's about the frequency of transmitting or receiving information, how long you can sleep between those transmissions. And that's all driven by the use case. I can actually demonstrate higher power consumption in a lower speed, lower category modem, because depending on the data payload and how frequently I'm doing it, I have to get on and stay on the network for a far longer time. So I sleep less of the time if I'm slower. So all in all, I don't want you to just, power is not one thing. Energy is not one thing. It's really a complex equation and a lot of knobs and dials involved in determining what the most energy efficient comms technology is.
Okay. All right, great. Now, Mubeen, are there deployments underway now with AT&T?
So we have announced support for the technologies, because as was said by Craig and Saverio, you get better battery performance, so you get better economics, better footprint. And our customers need those, but we have not announced a clear schedule. So yes, we are committed to deploying these for our customers, but we have not yet announced a clear schedule.
Okay, great, got it. And Mubeen, you talked a little bit earlier about new releases. And Craig, I think that you have some information to tell us a little bit about what narrowband IoT is and what these standards will mean.
Sure. Let me just make also a comment about Category 1 LTE. Remember, Category 1 was part of, and I'm not sure everybody understands this, it was defined in Release 8. The very first 3GPP spec that talked about LTE included something called UE Category 1. It was largely ignored and kind of, orphaned, I guess. It's kind of the forgotten stepchild. And that's because it was, defined as a low-speed kind of connectivity solution, and everybody was rightly so focused on delivering broadband 100 megabit plus kind of speeds for their phones and tablets. Meanwhile, we were, I think, one of the first to really promote the idea of revisiting and sort of dusting it off and implementing it properly to enable low cost, which was the first priority for IoT, and potentially low power as well. So that's what happened, I think. And now what we've seen is we know of 3 US carriers, as well as several in Asia and a few in Europe, that are now actively deploying or imminent deployment of Category 1 support in their networks. So now your question was more about what's next or more kind of what's coming, I believe.
Right,
So,
narrowband
yeah.
IoT and what will be the most direct replacement as carriers sunset?
Sure. So in Release 13, 3GPP Release 13, which is kind of in the final stages of freezing, should be complete later this quarter. It introduces 2 new UE categories, and I hinted at these in my chart earlier. One called Category M1, or what you've all been calling Cat M out there, and the next called Category M2, which has been labeled Narrowband IoT. So these two, I call them both narrowband. Cat M1 is a 1.4 megahertz channel system. Cat M2, or narrowband, is a 200 kilohertz system. These both significantly reduce the cost, the complexity, the power consumption, et cetera, but still retain that compatibility or that coexistence with existing LTE spectrum and LTE RANs. So those things are coming out imminently, and reduced peak speeds. And in addition, one of the major things that they deliver, or that Release 13 introduces, is improved coverage. Coverage was one of the big kind of concerns about IoT developers. Is my node, is my connection going to be covered by these networks? In Release 13, they've introduced technology that significantly increases the indoor penetration and the coverage of these networks. So taken all together, we see, Cat-M and narrowband, or these two Release 13 narrowband standards, as, opening up real major new markets for LTE to be used as a low cost, low power, wide area connectivity.
Yeah, I would like to just add one more point, which is that these technologies, when compared to some of the LoRa or Sigfox, are deployed within a operator-owned spectrum.
Correct.
So the spectrum management is done just like any network provider today does. Whereas within the unlicensed spectrum deployments, you always run into a brutal environment where you are competing and in a limited spectrum resource. So that's another differentiation between the two types of technologies from LTE versus some of the unlicensed band, low power.
And Mubeen, what do you see as the first use cases for low power wide area LTE?
I would call them general low power network. The use cases, because of low speeds, small footprints, low cost, are things that today with the regular network fall below the line. A lot of them are, so for example, smart cities is one big area of focus for these deployments. So this means any kinds of meters, lights, other sensors deployed. Industrial is another area. Think about a oil rig or a refinery where you have all kinds of sensors that need to be connected, and you cannot afford to have, tens of dollars of modules connecting each one of those. So those are some of the use cases, and also some low intensity asset monitoring solutions, as well as security. Think of alarms, simple sensors off of the alarms. These are all use cases that I think can take advantage of low power networks in general.
Okay, great. We have about 15 minutes left in the webinar, and the topics we have left to cover are key verticals and opportunities for vendors. So I'd like to skip ahead to the opportunities, and then we'll go back to the key verticals if time permits. We've talked a little bit about the chip developer opportunity, but Craig, I know that it extends beyond just LTE-only modems. So can you give us a little more information about opportunities for the chip developers?
Sure. I mean, we're obviously excited about this, a new application space for the kind of connectivity technology we're developing. We think this IoT market can be, approach over the next 5 years. It can approach in size, almost the cell phone market, right? We're hundreds of millions of units per year is the opportunity here. So that's obviously a whole new market segment for chip vendors like us. But we can't sit on just doing a modem, right? So these applications, many of them have built-in sensors, location, different interfaces, et cetera. So we need to innovate and develop, system-on-chip solutions that match those application requirements. So that's an opportunity to innovate and deliver new products and new value. You can also anticipate that, keep going up the value chain from the chip vendor to the module vendor to the device maker. That whole value chain, I think earlier you mentioned, what percent of the IoT, dollars, the opportunity. It's not just chips. It's that whole value chain. So I think device vendors, the SIM makers, that whole ecosystem, RF component vendors, all stand to gain from from this emerging market, and the ability for taking a global standard like LTE and applying it to those applications is a great opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you. Saverio, what about the RAN vendors? Do you see opportunities here for them?
As Craig said, definitely yes. And you see the interest of some networking, telecoms networking company, see Ericsson, but also others, and Huawei and so on. Is definitely, there is, as Craig said, there is a shake for all the value chain. And we are looking at base stations that can be in the order of cost between $5,000 and $10,000. So definitely yes.
Okay, great. So I guess the core network providers as well. We talked a little bit about signaling, and are there other opportunities that the panelists see for core network equipment providers?
So this is Craig. I think one of the things that I've heard out there is, as you go down in, category here, as you go down to these lower cost nodes, lower speed, lower data use applications, there is likely going to be some innovation or some re-architecture done in the core to reduce the cost of the core network. These core networks have been designed for 100 million, mobile phone subscribers. There's different use cases, different mobility factors. So I do think you'll see some kind of segmented or segregated core networks get deployed to support the increase in the IoT connectivity and traffic, to support those lower ARPUs.
Okay, great. That's interesting. Okay, now one thing that I think is also really interesting to a lot of our audience is any opportunities for new construction to support new networks. And I think maybe there may have been some of this already in Europe. Saverio, is that correct?
I think it's important to distinguish between the Sigfox approach to all this in infrastructure terms and the others. Okay. So Sigfox, what it's doing is basically becoming the operator of national LP1 network through their SNO programs. So they want to become, or they are becoming, the equivalent, if you want, of the mobile network operators for LP1. And so they have, I think in Europe, 8 countries covered at the moment. Notably UK, France, Spain, Italy. They are moving towards East. And therefore, the approach there is to identify the partner at national level that will then roll out the SNO, or becomes the SNO, the Sigfox network operator in the country. And this is the approach Sigfox is having. So it's quite an ambitious approach from Sigfox. I think there is then the other side of deployments, which looks maybe more at application-centric type of network. Or maybe more private LP1 or LP1 deployments in city. I mean, Mubeen mentioned the number of potential applications in smart city, and LoRa, for example, is moving quite a lot into cities. So I think it's in order to identify the infrastructure opportunities, it's important to understand the approach to market from the two worlds at the moment that are moving the LP1, so the Sigfox and the LoRa. And Sigfox is probably at the moment the organization that has the most attraction from many, due also to an astonishing marketing activities, and also they have a footprint that they have developed quite extensively in the last 3 years, with presence in a number of countries now, number of cities. If you think, for example, that they have launched the Sigfox Foundation for applying IoT in humanitarian cases. In that, you can also read how Sigfox is kind of reaching the status of a big company. So it's important to distinguish these two worlds in terms of go-to-market strategy.
So in summary, you're saying that Sigfox does present some potential new construction opportunities, perhaps?
Yes, definitely, yes.
Okay, great.
Also the others, but I want to emphasize the national-centric approach of Sigfox versus a non-national centric approach. Sigfox wants to build the national network, the national LP1 in country X. The others not necessarily.
Right.
I'm not considering the mobile network operators in this discussion. I'm talking about Sigfox versus the other cities now, so versus LoRa.
Yes, okay, and we know that Sigfox has named 10 US cities in which it wants to deploy networks. So do you anticipate Sigfox network operators in each of those 10 cities working for them?
I believe so. I also anticipate that Sigfox wants to have a USA network too at some point in their life.
Okay, all right, well, we'll watch for that. Okay, and finally, we know there's a huge opportunity in software data analytics. Mubeen, can you speak to that?
Yeah, as I mentioned in the comments earlier, we definitely see a huge opportunity in data, but it's not just in analytics. I just want to be, from our view at least, it's around getting, first of all, extracting the data from sensors and devices, managing the data, normalizing the data, making the data available to the right applications, federating the data, mashing the data, and then at some point you need to take action and analyzing. It is for sure these connected devices are going to generate a tremendous amount of data. And we have probably more applications that we can think through or uses of this data than we can think through at this point. But I think we have a long way to go there. I think operators will play a role, but it's really the ecosystem that has to play a role in that.
Right, okay.
Can I add a comment to this? Just, I think there is also a need of flexible data visualization tools, because the data can mean different things from different parts of the organizations, and this data needs to be read in a very easy way and represented in a very easy way. And I think the data visualization tool is an important part to enable also to enable the companies, they have a needs of data scientists. And I think making data more easy will enable managers and professionals to use the data in a more effective way. I think I don't know in the US, but in Europe is an issue here, the ability of representing the data in the right way, and also the needs of data specialist. I don't want to call about data scientist who has a PhD, but someone who is able to read and analyze the data is in front of them. And at the beginning, Martha, you mentioned all the implications on the labor side of the IoT. And probably one of the area that is lacking in terms of skill is the data analytics, data management, all the things Mubeen said. And visualization tools can really help to fill a little bit a gap.
Right, we hear a lot about that. Okay, great, thank you. We have about 5 minutes left, so we're not going to have time to go through all of these key verticals, and many of them we've already touched on. But one that we haven't talked about at all is the connected home. Saverio, can you give us a little information about that? I know we hear a lot about things like Thread and other low power things and I know that the carriers also have connected home solutions. So can you talk about that a little bit?
So definitely connected home, smart home is another hot topic. And the mobile network operators are really excited about that. AT&T has probably historically one of the first proposition into smart home, but here in Europe is becoming extremely relevant. And I think it's becoming extremely relevant because here we are having the deployment of smart metering, in some countries completed, and we start to see data energy management solutions going to the home and so on. So you see the connected home by Deutsche Telecom, you see I don't remember exactly now the name of Orange Business Services in France and Poland, Vodafone in the UK. So is an important topic, but I think that mobile network operators are struggling, not only mobile network operators, but all the value chain in connected home are struggling in explaining to consumers the needs for smart home solutions. Why do I need to have an app to control my energy consumptions? Seems banal, but is one of the issues that is limiting a bit the adoption of smart home solutions. I'm talking about Europe primarily. But and within the smart home, there are all a number of applications that we mentioned before. I'm thinking about the security aspects of it that we can do through LP1. We have the energy, as I mentioned before. There is this idea that mobile network operators from quadruple play providers will become quintuple play providers, so they will offer, in addition to entertainment, internet, phone, and so on, the smart home solutions. I think there is an issue on how intelligent these smart home solutions should be, what type of intelligence we should have at the gateway. So again, from an application perspective, is probably the topic at the moment that is exciting a bit a lot of people in the IoT community. Yeah,
well, let's hear from AT&T, since AT&T has a digital life solution. Mubeen?
Yeah, so I think Saverio is right. This is a high-end solution. If you look at it in the context of a security solution upgrade, if you will, this is a high-end solution. It provides, you know, your normal security around the house, sensors connected to your doors and stuff. But it also provides a lot of convenience and other features, like I can unlock the door, I can have a video camera on my porch, front door, inside to watch if my kids are home and the babysitter is doing their job. I can have, turn on my furnace. I can watch, turn on the lights or the energy. So there's a lot of those sensors that come as part of it. So it is a high-end solution. We're finding good traction in the marketplace with that, and the adoption is growing, at least in the markets in the US that we have deployed this at.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that we did not have time to take audience questions today, but we will try to answer those offline. And so at this time, I would like to thank all of our panelists for today, starting with Mubeen Khan, Associate Vice President for IoT Solutions at AT&T. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Saverio Romeo is Principal Analyst at Beecham Research. Saverio, thank you very much for your comments today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And Craig Miller, representing our sponsor, Sigfox, VP of Worldwide Marketing. Craig, thanks very much.
Yeah, I was very, very happy to be here. Thanks, Martha.
Thank you all very much, and this will conclude the webinar.